Hi guys, this is David NR9V with AllScan, and I thought I would do a quick video showing how I put together an AllScan ANF101 node. So first of all, we have the AllScan ANF101 URI here, which has a CM108B USB audio interface IC, USB-C jack, jack for the 2.5 millimeter going to the receive HT, jack for the 3.5 millimeter cable going to the transmit HT, and I've got a Dell YS3040 here. I've already checked the battery and confirmed we've got at least 3 volts on the battery, so that should be good for another few years at least. This is a 16 gigabyte 12 volt 3040, fairly recent one, model manufacturing year 2021. Got the original Dell 12 volt 2 amp power supply, and I've got 2 brand new Retevis RT85 HTs, which are very easy to find on Amazon for around $30 a piece. Price goes up and down sometimes, but if you keep an eye out, they are often available for $30 a pair, or sometimes even less. So the RT85s come with these rubber duck antennas, and what else? I've got some drill bits so that we can put in 2 holes in the back of the 3040 and mount it right on the back of the URI. And I've got the short gold-plated 3.5 millimeter TRS cable and 2.5 millimeter TRS cable, USB A to C cable with a 7 millimeter inner diameter ferrite with 1 turn of the cable around the ferrite, and then some hardware here. And if you look on the back of the URI, it tells you what hardware is needed. So for the MiniPC, we use 2 M3 by 10 millimeter screws, 2 washers, a lock nut, and the nut. And then to mount the HTs, we have 4 M2 by 20 millimeter screws, each with a washer, and then a 7 millimeter spacer. The way that works is we've got 2 screws on the back of the RT85s at the bottom. We're going to take those out. The spacers then go in there, and the HT attaches to the URI mounting plate, and the spacer keeps it nice and tight, but not too tight. And then the URI actually has some battery contactors that directly contact the battery terminals on the RT85. Thus, there is 0 soldering required to assemble an ANF101. So let's get started. The first thing we're going to do is take out those screws on the back of the RT85s. Get this sticker out of the way. And note that the RT85s are directly powered by the URI, and the ANF101-M URI mounting plate is 100% USB powered, and that provides 5 volts to the HTs. And Retevis RT85 HTs actually work great down to below 4 volts, and at that low of a voltage they still put out, or at 5 volts they still put out 2.5 watts in high power or 1 watt in low power, and run very cool and very efficiently at that low of an input voltage. Loosen the screws a little bit. put 2 of the M2x20 screws with washers through the back of the URI. Put the 2 spacers. And then this HT, I just cut off the little cover that goes over the K1 jacks. And on the receive HT, we only need the 2.5 millimeter jack, so I just cut off the top half of the cover on that side. That'll go on the left side of the URI mounting plate here. The screws then go right into the holes on the HT, and then I'm going to hold this tight. You want to be careful. You don't want to move it around too much because you might snag the battery terminals. So I just kind of gently situate the HT in there so that the top back of the HT is in this U-shaped groove of the ANF101 URI / mounting plate. And then once it's in there, then I can kind of hold it snug, and it's pretty nice fit. And at that point, I start tightening these down. And then I'll do the final tightening by hand. Oops, bumped the camera there. There we are. And I'm not putting a huge amount of force there. I'm just going to kind of tighten it down carefully and gently until the screw stops turning. It's not very much torque. It's maybe just, I don't know what the exact torque number would be, but you don't need a lot of tension. You'll just kind of get them down to a certain point where you feel that they're tight. They don't really want to move anymore, and so you probably don't want to put any more pressure than that. So at that point, the HT's on there pretty solidly. We'll take a 1-foot nylon tie strap here, put it around the top through these oval holes that are in the mounting plate, and get that through there. And then we'll get that kind of tight, and then get your fingers behind there, kind of pull that tie strap through the holes so it's nice and tight on the front of the HT, and it's pulling the top of the HT snugly against the mounting plate. And then you don't want to put too much force on here to break the tie strap, but you want to get it nice and tight. And use a small pliers to kind of pull it. Just to hear it click once or twice, but not too much. And that's good. Trim the tie strap. Okay, that HT's done. Now I'll do the other one. 2 M2x20 millimeter screws with washers. Flip it around, holding the back of the screws so they don't fall right back out. Spacers are on there. And now we'll put the transmit HT on there and finagle these screws a little bit till they go in the holes. Okay, there we are. And start tightening this down. And I'll just kind of tighten down a little bit so that they won't fall out, and then I'll kind of get a little better position, make sure that the HT is in that slot up there real nice. And now I've got some better angle on it. Okay. Final tightening by hand just to make sure we've got the right amount of torque. Don't want not enough torque or Might not pull it down to touch the battery contacts, and you don't want to do too much torque or you might strip the hole. So these holes are nice and tight on the HTs. Once you get them down to where the spacer's down there, it's a real nice solid fit. And now ready for the other tie strap. Make sure it's nice and tight on the front. And pull it a little bit harder, but not too hard. Okay, that should be good. Just make sure that the strap's tight. HT is nice and snug against the PCB. Okay, that's done. And before we put the cables on there, we'll mount the MiniPC. So the 3040 MiniPC is just going to go between these two lines. You'll see we've got some dashed lines here, one there and one there, and notes about the 3040 mounting holes. So these are the two mounting holes we're going to use, and the PC is just going to sit right on those lines, which will center it on the back of the URI. And the other thing we want to do is, because we're mounting the 3040 on the back, we want to make sure none of these leads are too long. So I'm going to trim these couple of what are those called? Leads, the LED leads that are coming back. They're sticking back maybe an extra ½ millimeter further than they need to, and then the wires coming back from the back of the surface mount switch there. So let's just trim those real quick. Okay, that's nice and smooth and back there. Hold the MiniPC like this. Okay, that's centered and everything's real nice and stable like that. So take an 1/8 inch drill bit and just pre-drill the holes a little bit. We're not going to drill all the way through the bottom panel of the MiniPC. We'll just drill through the plastic part of it, and then I'll take it off and do the final drilling through the metal part of the bottom cover of the 3040 case. So make sure that's real nice and centered and everything's nice and flat and flush on the bottom, stable. Okay, that looks good. Okay, so now I've got the two holes drilled through the plastic part of the 3040, and we'll clean up that plastic so it doesn't make a mess. Take off the cover of the 3040 and drill the rest of the holes, or drill the holes the rest of the way through. Okay, I'm going to do this off the camera so I can get a better angle. Now I've got my holes drilled through the 3040. Clean that up again. Now we'll take a larger drill bit just to deburr those holes and get them nice and clean so there's no metal shavings floating around inside the PC or on the node. Just a little, barely any pressure just to get those burrs off the hole. Okay, we're done with the drill. Might as well make sure the MiniPC is nice and clean. Okay. So now the M3 screws go in there, no washer, just straight through the back. And then on this side, we do want a washer to provide a little space between the bottom of the 3040 and the back of the URI and mounting plate. And we'll stick those two screws through there. And then we'll do 2 lock washers and a regular washer. And the nut. You don't really need to use hardware like this. You could just use acrylic mounting tape. This stuff is really strong, holds tight, comes out cleanly, but the metal mounting hardware is a little stronger and probably more stable long term. So now we'll take a little hex driver and tighten those up a little bit. These don't need to be real tight, just kind of hand tight. You don't want to deform the bottom of the 3040. You don't need to deform that metal. And then if you're not sure, this does have a little bit of play, so you want to make sure it's straight and level. You can put the 3040 kind of back on there a little bit and just make sure everything's nice and flush. Okay, that looks good. And then we'll tighten that up the rest of the way. So barely any pressure there. So I can tell that's a little bit out of, it's not perfectly level, so I'll redo that a little bit. If you look at the bottom, you can kind of tell you just wanted about a 1/16 of an inch up there. Okay, that looks nice and level. Okay, that's nice and tight and level. And the top of the 3480 snaps in place. And this is a very nice solid node, very stable. So now let's put the two cables on. First we have the USB cable. That's in there, and that will go. I usually use the bottom jack on the back. Okay. I'll do the 3.5 millimeter cable. And there's a little bit of slack on here, so what I do is do one loop and then put it in. Or no, actually, these are newer cables. They're a little bit shorter, so I don't need to do a loop. I'm just going to go like that. And then I'll take a zip tie and pull that down. Okay, so that's nice and tight. It's not going anywhere. And the 2.5 millimeter cable on the receive HT. And then I'll tie that down with a zip tie also. And that zip tie can actually hold the USB cable in place also. So if I kind of adjust this ferrite a little bit, I can get the USB cable nice and tight. And with all the cables nice and tight like this and real close to the copper ground plane that's in the URI and mounting plate, there's zero RFI issues. That's why there's no ferrites on these cables, because they're so short and so close to the copper ground plane that there's really just no way for RFI to be an issue when you keep the cabling nice and tight like that. So I've got some holes in the URIs that make it real easy to put zip ties through. Okay, so the cabling is done. Zip ties are all in place. We've got a real nice, solid, simple, easy to assemble node. And what else have we got here? We've got the two antennas. And then when you're using this node, the transmit HT volume control is just, the switch is just going to be switched on, but the volume left off. The audio output from that transmit HT is not used anywhere because this is a crossband full duplex node, and the transmit HT is transmitting on 2 meters. And then grab my handy dandy HT over here. I've got my Woshin KG10QH, and this is going to receive on 147 megahertz and transmit on 431. So the receive HT here will receive on 431. This will come out the 2.5 millimeter jack on that radio, come into the 2.5 millimeter jack on the URI mounting plate, go into the CM108 IC, out the USB jack, into the Dell 3040, which is running Debian 13 and ASL3. And then ASL3 is set up with duplex equals 3. So this is not a repeater. This is a crossband full duplex personal node. And once you key it up, it will start transmitting a silent carrier on 2 meters. So when you start transmitting, you're going to hear that, and my other demo videos cover that and give some examples of that. And then if somebody doubles with you, or there's noise, or there's some kind of issue on the network, you'll hear it and can respond appropriately. And then also when the node is transmitting, it's also always receiving, because you've got a separate dedicated receive HT that will always be able to be keyed up, even if you're on a busy hub or a busy QSO where everybody's quick keying. You can still get in right away because this radio is always receiving. You can transmit to it anytime and key up the node. The receive volume level is going to be set to about 9 o'clock, and I always mark that with a dot and a silver Sharpie here. So it's just a little bit below 9 o'clock, so that I put a dot here, and then mark that line on the volume control, and then put the antennas on, and this node is done as far as the hardware assembly. And I will of course test this and set up the node number and ASL configs and all that, but that is a topic for a separate video. For more information, check out allscan.info.